Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. So today I have a very different video for you, and it's one that I've been wanting to make since I've started my channel but never really had the confidence to do it, and lately I've been getting more and more questions about this, and I thought it was time now, because I've grown a really close community with you all, that I felt that this needed to be addressed. And basically I'm going to be talking through my story and why I'm in a wheelchair, basically making you all aware, because I feel like it's a really important issue and I've kind of avoided it in the past, and when people ask me I kind of give that one-on-one person a answer, but I haven't really made anything public. So I feel like now I'm in a much better place to talk about it, and I hope that you find it interesting and I hope that it answers any of your questions. So before I actually start, I just want to say that this was actually inspired by another YouTuber who is called Jordan Bone, and if you don't know who she is, please go and check her out. She is an amazing YouTuber, and she actually suffered a car accident and ended up being paralysed. Her situation is just very similar to mine, so I can relate really well to her. She's one of my literal biggest inspirations ever. She is incredible, and I just want to say thank you. Although she may not be watching this, thank you for just being the biggest inspiration to me and for giving me the confidence to actually make this video. And also I just want to say again that I'm not making this video for sympathy. Like, sympathy is the last thing I want. If you know me, you know that I don't want people to feel sorry for me in any way. I'm a very positive person and I see things in a very positive way. I just don't really want to do this video for that. I just want to raise awareness of spinal cord injuries and make people more aware of what it is and what it involves, and basically just remove the stigma around different disabilities. And I really hope that my story reaches many different people and maybe adds that little bit of inspiration if you are going through something similar or you know someone going through the same thing. So enough of me rambling on, and let's just get into the story. So as a child I was really healthy, happy, just a typical child basically, and there was no sign of anything out of the norm basically. I just was a normal child. And what actually happened was, when I got to the age of 3, I think I was at this point, my parents actually noticed a lump on my spine and they wanted to get it checked out, because obviously this just wasn't a normal thing. It wasn't like I had just chicken pox or something that would just go. It was something that was very different. So of course they were concerned and took me to the doctors to get it checked out, and for a while basically nothing happened. They said it was nothing to worry about and nothing of concern, and that it would probably just go down, and that it might just be something to do with me growing as a child. So yeah, nothing was of concern and nothing was bad at this point. So that went on for a few months I believe, and the lump didn't go down. It was still there, and I think it was just growing in size and just didn't look normal. It wasn't just a typical lump. So they kept taking me back to the doctors, and eventually, I think it was after around 4 months maybe, I'm not exactly sure because obviously I was young, I don't exactly remember this point, but in September 2003 I eventually got a diagnosis, and this was after I went to the doctors and they sent me for an MRI scan, which, can I just say, I hate to this day. If you've ever been in one, you'll know what they're like, but they're the most claustrophobic things and I hate them. Like, they're horrible. You basically have to lie flat on a thin, narrow bed, and then it slides you into this big, like, polo shaped dome, and your whole body is covered by this magnetic dome, and it takes images of inside you basically. It's basically like a big X-ray. It's just not really pleasant, it's really claustrophobic and just really uncomfortable, so yeah, I still don't really like those. But that basically gave us a diagnosis, and after the doctors looked at the MRI scan, they sent me straight up to Bristol Children's Hospital to get a biopsy because they wanted to find out what it was. And this is basically where everything went downhill. So during that biopsy, basically what happens is they take a sample of tissue. So they basically took a sample of where the lump was, which was actually on my spine. It was in the middle of my spine, and yeah, it basically didn't really go to plan, and I ended up being paralysed from the waist down. And that was not the only thing, like, that was the aftermath, but the actual lump they found was a fibrosarcoma tumour, which is basically a cancerous tumour. So not only was I now paralysed, I also had to deal with the treatment that came with cancer and getting rid of that. So I was very very, very ill after this biopsy, and my spine actually like collapsed. So it had to be pinned back together with spinal rods, which are still in my spine now. So I was rushed to another hospital at this point where they inserted them to stop my basically body from collapsing, because yeah, the biopsy, like I said, didn't really go as intended. So once I had that, I was sent back to Bristol Children's, I believe, and was in intensive care because I was basically just really critically ill. And I'm inserting pictures throughout this video so you can see the sort of effects that this had. And yeah, I was basically just kept in intensive care, and I didn't really know what was going on at the time, obviously, because I was young and I was just not in a mental state to understand anyway, because I was that ill. Basically all of my family had the pressure put on top of them, which wasn't a good time for anybody. So once we actually had this diagnosis and knew what was going on, we then had to focus on the actual treatment process. So I was actually given 4 months of intensive chemotherapy and also 30 sessions of radiotherapy. And if you don't know what these are, chemotherapy is basically a really intense drug treatment, and it makes all of your hair fall out, which is what happened to me, which was obviously devastating at the time. I feel like you don't appreciate your hair until it's not there, and it makes you really, really sick. I was just physically being sick all the time. I couldn't keep anything down, which is why I then also had to have a nose tube to feed me, which was honestly the worst thing ever. I still remember the actual, like, what it felt like, the feeling of it going through your nose, down your throat, making you gag every time it went down, and just feeling it go all the way down to your stomach. It was the worst feeling ever. And when you had to change it, like, every week I think it was, and the tape was just itchy on your face, it was just not a great time. And then, like I said, I also had radiotherapy, which is where lasers are basically targeted into the area where the tumour is. So both of these treatments are supposed to reduce the actual tumour size, which eventually they did, and thankfully it got rid of the tumour completely, and touch wood, it hasn't actually came back since. However, the actual most significant thing that has happened since is that I actually developed scoliosis as a result, which is basically a curvature of the spine, and a lot of people actually suffer with this. But because I had my rods put in at such a young age, and my spine grew a lot since then, and just my whole body grew, it made my spine just completely bend. So in 2012, I actually had the rods extended down into the bottom of my spine, and that was really successful and it all went really well. But last year I actually had to have them extended further into my pelvis, so they were basically pinned into my hips, because although my spine was straight, my hips and pelvis was still flopping around and still bent. So it was important that we completely straighten that out. And if you were active on my Instagram and Twitter at the time, then you would have seen my recovery process. So although I no longer actually have the cancer, the after effects are still existent. So once the tumour had actually gone down, I obviously then had to focus on actually making myself independent again, because I was no longer able to walk. I walked into the hospital but never walked out again. A lot of physio was needed. I was basically just starting to sit up again. I literally couldn't even sit up. My legs were completely stiff as well. I actually got nicknamed frog's legs in the end, because my legs were literally in a frog position where they're raised up like this. My legs were literally stuck in this position. So I had to have leg calipers to completely flatten out my legs just to get them to actually bend, because they literally wouldn't move. And I also had really bad spasms, which I still have now, and that's just a thing that you have to deal with spinal cord injuries. My leg would just be normal and it will suddenly just shoot out for no reason at all, but it's just an autonomic reaction, because the signals aren't going properly from my brain down my spinal cord into my legs. Obviously, because the spinal cord is severed, that means that the signals just get stuck basically, and that's what happens. I'm also mentioning the spinal cord. My level is actually T6. If you know anything about spinal cord injury, that basically means the level of where your feeling stops. So T6 is around the waist level. So anything below the waist I can't feel basically at all. So if you touch my leg, I wouldn't feel it. So yeah, that basically is what it means. So going back to the whole idea of rehabilitation, that took a very long time, and eventually I did end up going back to school. So obviously I was meant to start school as everyone does when they're that age, and I did start a little bit late, and I only did half days. I did mornings or afternoons, I think it was, and everyone at school was just so lovely. I made so many friends, and they basically used to fight over who used to push me around the playground. So yeah, so that's basically the background of the actual story. So to summarise, I had a fibrosarcoma tumour which left me paralysed from the waist down, and it basically means that I'll never walk again. But I personally feel that it's made me a very different person to maybe what I would have been. I feel like I haven't changed completely, but it's definitely made me more positive and just makes me see all the positives in life, when definitely there are negatives and there are days when I do get down about it and I do struggle, but I try to always see the positives in things and just live my life as I would have done. There are things that I can't do, and that's just something that you have to come to terms with, and I definitely have over the years. I just understood that maybe I can't do everything that I want to do, but I can do things in different ways, and some things I may be able to do better than other people. I just have to do it in a very different and alternative way to maybe how everybody else would, and that's totally fine. And I just feel like you have to make every moment count. I'm doing this YouTube channel and I'm living my dream. Like, this is something that I've absolutely just been loving, and it's something that I can do independently, which is something that I always mention. Because of my situation, there are a lot of things I can't do myself. This is something that I could do myself, and I don't need anyone to film this video, I don't need anyone to edit it for me. I can do that, and I just feel like I have complete control. I've also achieved so many things during my journey as well. Like, my family never ever thought that I would drive a car, and now I'm driving around with hand controls. There's just so many things that you can achieve, like I said, but just in different ways, and that's really, really important to remember. And yeah, driving is just something that definitely gives me independence as well. It makes me feel free, it makes me feel like I can do something that everyone else can do. I also just want to talk about the opportunities I've had as a result of my spinal cord injury. There are definitely some positive things that have come out of it, and over the years I've done so many different charity things. I've worked with Dream Away, which is a very close charity to our hearts, and that's when we go to Exmouth every year. That charity provide us with that holiday and we have an amazing time, we love it. And I've also worked with Post Pals, which was a lifesaver when I was in hospital, because I was spending so much time in hospital and in click sergeant centres and different houses and things that were nearby to the hospital, so that I could go in every day for my treatment. This lovely company basically just sent me letters and gifts, and it basically works by people all over the world sending things to me personally, so they can send me cards that they've made, gifts, anything like that, and it's just an amazing charity and I just love getting involved with it. And I was lucky enough to be the actual face of the charity, which I still am to this day, and if I can insert a picture now I will try to, but that was just something that I've just always been proud of, because I feel like it's a really important charity to support. And I've also worked with Cancer Research, which I was also the face for their Christmas campaign, but I'll try and insert that picture as well so you can see the front of the catalogue cover. And yeah, there's just been some absolutely amazing things that have come out of it. I've won many different awards, and it's just incredible to think that I can use something negative to influence people in a positive way. And that's why I wanted to make this video and why I wanted to share my story, because I want to make a difference and I want to make my situation something that can be inspirational in a way. I don't want to be classed as an inspiration as in I think I'm really amazing and everything like that, but I mean that I can just inspire others that there is always a good ending and there is always a positive at the end of the tunnel. So if you are going through something at the moment that is similar to this, just believe that you can get through it, because honestly you can. If you are determined and if you seek the positives out of the many negatives, you can definitely achieve and succeed. Just appreciate the life that you've got, live your dreams. If you do have any further questions, then please leave them in the comments and I'll be sure to reply to you. But I just want to thank you all for all of your continued support. You're always so lovely, and I hope that this video helped you guys out. And if you did enjoy hearing my story and was inspired by it, then I would honestly really appreciate it if you could share this video with your family and friends or your followers on any social media you have. There is a share button above, and if you share this video it would just mean the absolute world, because I just want this video to reach so many people and just raise awareness of spinal cord injuries and of cancer journeys. And I just wish you all the best, and thank you for continuing to inspire me every day to make these videos, and I love you all so much, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!
I don't know what you've been told, but this guy right here's gonna